All right, you dicks. So welcome to another episode of crimepaysbutbotanydoesnt. I'm going to keep it short today because I'm in a bad mood. Okay, I'm in a salty mood. All right, so I came up here, chill out a little bit. Okay, can't have a cocktail because I get too rowdy, get too fighty. So what I do instead is I come up here and I try to look at some beautiful, dainty little fucking lilies, which is what we're going to do right now. Okay, Calicortus argilosus, the clay mariposa lily. You see that there? Look inside that perianth. Look inside that. Tell me that doesn't calm you right down. Write the shit down. Oh, we got a pollinator in there. Look at those curly little sepals. Excuse me, curly little sepals. Okay, since there is a distinction between the first series of three perianth appendages and the upper series of three perianth appendages, you have sepals and petals, not just tepals. Okay, if there was no distinction, it would just be 6 tepals. Okay, but remember we're dealing with a monocot here, so multiples of 3, multiples of 3. You got 6 stamens in there, 6 stamens. Just get up close and look at those. Nice. Do you see those? All the little hairs and shit in there too. Okay, probably manipulating pollinator behavior, probably helping keep the nectar in those nectaries, which is at the base of those 3 big ass petals. You could see the anthers are at different stages of dehiscence. See the powdery pink one in the back? And then the ones that are more purplish and smooth in the front. The ones that are more purplish have not dehisced yet. Okay? And you can see why they call it the clay mariposa lily, because we're on clay. Okay? Clay's got that quality where it changes volume according to how much moisture it's got. That's why you got the cracks, all right? The cracks in the soil. Maybe one day this whole section will just slide off right into Lake Chabot, the toxic man-made reservoir surrounded entirely by a forest of eucalyptus that some prick planted in the early 1900s because he thought it was going to make him rich in the lumber business. But it turns out eucalyptus isn't very good lumber to begin with. Look at that lake, too. I've seen that. Well, it's not a lake. It's a reservoir. It's a man-made lake. But I've been here on times when they had a toxic algal bloom, and it looked like the green goop from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that toxic green slime, just coating the shores of that stuff. All right, don't let your dog swim in it. Okay, don't you get naked. If you feel frisky, don't get naked. Go swim in it because you might die. You get that stuff in your mouth, you might die. We also got some nice Hemizonia congesta around here. The tarweeds. Do you like tarweeds? Do you like the glands? Do you like the glands? You should. Again, the whole tarweed tribe. It was one of these that made it to the Hawaiian Islands. You know, back in the day, 6 million years ago, late Miocene. Who knows what the birds were doing? Having rough sex. One of them got a little tarweed akeen in its plumage and then flew to the Hawaiian Islands. Okay, maybe to escape a wounded, jilted lover. And, you know, then the little tarweed akeen fell out of its plumage and germinated. And then, of course, now 6 million years later, you got the Hawaiian Silver Sword Alliance. And adaptive radiation, a wonderful case study in adaptive radiation. But there's that Hemizonia, wonderful annual, very pungent smell to it as well. Oh, look at those glands. And look, pay attention to the involucre. See where the filaries are. Remember I always tell you to take pictures of filaries when you're looking at sunflower family members? Okay? Look at those filaries, very distinct. Okay, keeled. Let's get up close, see if we can get a better. Okay, so I ripped one out of the ground. He said it was fine. He said it was fine, and he didn't mind. Okay, always have a good bullshit story to come up with. That's exactly what I say when I am telling a bullshit story. What are you doing here? Oh, I talked to the property owner, and they said it was fine. They said it was fine. So this guy, you could see, look at all the hair. Intense hair, adapted for the heat, for the Mediterranean climate where it doesn't rain in the summer. Okay, narrow, lanceolate leaves. And he's basically done. I mean, it almost looks like he's you know, closed up shop for at least for the vegetative parts. And now he's just putting it all into that flower. You can see some of them haven't even bloomed yet. Some of them haven't even bloomed. And there's those filaries. Okay? Each filary corresponding to an individual ligule, and there's an akene in there. Okay? That was a trademark. You read that book by Carl Quist. He's talking about that, you know, because the Hawaiian silver swords have that same morphology, and he thought it was pretty peculiar. And that was before they went in and looked at the DNA. I think it was Bruce Baldwin that did that. Bruce Baldwin is a wonderful man. Okay, that guy could be such an arrogant prick if he wanted to, but he's such a loving, kind of a hippie, sweet man. You know, but a hippie in a good sense of the word, not like neo-hippie creep. And he's just a kind, friendly guy with extremely good values. And anyway, Bruce Ball, I'm not trying to get on his nuts here or something. I just really respect the guy. He's a friend of mine. Anyway, there you go. Hemizonia congesta. Look at that nice little, almost like a little candy cane stripe on the underside of those ligules, those rays. And that's why they call it the tarweeds. Look at the glands, 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 glands. You see those glands? You see the glands? Okay, so but back to this guy, all right? Back to this beautiful Calicortis argilosus. You can see those green sepals just about to unfurl in that wonderful way that they do, okay? Kind of like a little column, like the top of a Roman column. They got that same kind of architecture to them. And then those tree petals are just going to burst up, boof, all right? You could see the leaves are basically done, okay? So you got a bulb in the ground. He's a geophyte, okay, like almost all lilies. And you know, so he photosynthesizes, stores that stuff in the ground. Then if he's got enough juice, he sends up a little peduncle, or perhaps two in this case. And well, I guess it's just one. It's a branching peduncle. And then he does his thing. He puts on a show. Okay, and there's those sepals. I love the sepals. Quite a few Calicortis do that, but this one, you know, being as rare as it is, so spectacular. Okay, wonderful to draw on low dose edibles. So we're at the northern extent of this guy's range right here. Oh, look at those anthers. They have not dehisced yet. Oh, they look all pink and plasticky. So we're at the northern extent of this guy's range. Okay, he grows in the inner coast ranges. Okay, within, you know, 60 to 100 miles of the ocean, maybe less. Okay, and then, you know, he goes down into Monterey County, I think is where that population ends. Then you got a 100-mile gap roughly, and then he reappears at a couple spots in San Luis Obispo County. Okay, so there's a disjunct in San Luis Obispo County. Who knows why? You know, who knows if it was a larger population, they got split up. Who knows why that is? Okay. Do you get them in Salinas? I don't know, but you only get it on clay. You only get it on this harsh clay. All right, a lot of lilies can take that clay. You get some fritillarias that can take that clay too. Okay, because remember, they got that bulb stage. They just, the clay gets too dry, okay, sucks all the water out, and they just go dormant. They got the summer dormancy, you know, in that bulb. And again, you got bulbs and you got corms, okay? You also, I mean, you can have giant tuber roots too, but bulbs are leaves and corms are stems. Basically, that's the base tissue of it. You can see there's quite a few. There's quite a few going off right there. I feel better already. You get away from people, come out here, look at some stuff, okay? There you go. See, right where Louis is standing, you could see you get the ground opening up. Okay, that, again, property of clay. It's because it's that clay soil. But the clay soil is what also makes it hard for many of the other invasive annuals, which most of this stuff is, okay, invasive annual grasses, to get established. Okay, so because that Calicortis can tolerate this clay, because it's a geophyte, it's got the bulb as well, it can outcompete. All right, so it blooms later than all the other stuff. So it's blooming later, it's here mid-June, it's also got a monopoly on the pollinators because not much else is going off save for that Hemizonia congesta, okay? Look, the obnoxious Italian thistle's already going off too. We're already closing up shop. It's still going off a little bit, but Italian thistle, see that? Carduus pycnocephalus, one of the bad weeds we get around here. Right next to it, you got that Calicortis argilosus. See that? And that's what they look like when they're done. See, there's the fruit. See, so that little, you could see it in there, that right in there, that whole style turns into the ovary. I mean, that basically is the ovary. Okay, so the style in this case is very short, and then we got that ovary down below. So it turns into a dry capsule. The petals curl up, fall off, and you got that ovary swelling up. Still got the 3-lobe stigma up top, and then you got a bunch of tiny seeds inside. Okay, hopefully someone will come back here, collect some of those seeds, maybe grow a few, and spread the rest out. Collect like 10% of them and disperse the rest to where, you know, you could do its thing. Maybe spread it a little bit down a hill or something. Okay, and I'd really be a prick if I didn't mention the nectaries. There's the nectary right there. See that little tuft of hairs, little crescent-shaped brown tuft of hairs at the base of that is the nectary. That's what produces the bait, the attractant that gets the pollinators to go in there. And then, of course, you got all those little hairs around it to help dictate the movement of the pollinator. Get them to just shuffle around in there, do a little dancing with the shit, shake their ass, come into contact with those anthers, okay? Come into contact with those anthers, get a little dusting of pollen on their ass, and maybe brush some pollen from another flower off on that the stigma in the center of that flower. All right, crafty little bastards. All the Calicortis got nectaries like this, and sometimes, especially if you get in there with a hand lens, which I bet if I did right now, but I'm not gonna, you could see little droplets of the nectar in there. Okay, so it doesn't look like a lot to us, but to a bee or a little fly, it's a lot. Wonder what these flowers look like under UV too. Look at all the nectar guys, little striations and patterns and what this shit. God damn, you really get some wonderful variation in this genus. Calicortis, you get a couple Calicortis in Oaxaca. I've seen them growing down there. You get a few more in Mexico, maybe 6 to 7 species in Mexico. Really wonderful ones down there too. But the epicenter of diversity is certainly in California. You get some Oregon, Washington, etc., and Nevada. Certainly in the American West, okay? What I think most are in California. Anyway, there you go. Look at it. You ever seen a nectarine on a lily before, Brick? Okay, I kind of misspoke, all right? Well, I left something out. When I said that most of the grasses here are invasive European annual grasses, all right, I was mostly talking about those golden hills, all right? The golden hills of California are all invasive grasses for the most part, okay? But we got a native here, very cool native, all right? Stipa pulchra, purple needlegrass, also called Nacella pulchra, and it's right here, all right? Because those fruits, so when they when they mature a little bit more, they get a nice little purple sheen to them. But you can see it's a bunch grass, okay? Anytime you see a bunch grass in the hills of California, not always, but in many cases, there's a good chance it's native. You can see right there too. See all these little bunches. So you got the browning invasive European bullshit, and then you got these little clumps, these little bunchy bunch grasses and what the shit. You see that? Anyway, there you go. Purple needlegrass, Stipa pulchra, Nacella pulchra. You call it whatever you want. Apparently there's been some fights in the taxonomy, okay? But grasses can really be a clusterfuck. But you can see, obviously, look at those needle-like fruits on it. Do you see that? So anyway, the moral of the story is clay is another substrate that can act as a specialist, or plants can act as specialists on. Basically, it presents an obstacle to plant growth in many cases, and so you get clay specialist plants. Just like serpentine or gypsum or limestone or dunes, nutrient poor, fast draining dune sand, same thing. The thing I want you to do is look at the overall ecological picture. Not just come over to the lilies and say, look, that's beautiful and what the shit, oh, it makes me feel good. Or oh, I can take it and put it on my ass. Or oh, it's got a compound in it that will get me high. Look at the overall picture. The larger picture, you prick. All right? A much more interesting story than just what can it do for me. All right? Don't be a simpleton. That's all I got for you today. Go fuck yourself. Have a lovely rest of your afternoon. Bye. A little more windy on this side because you got the bay, and then just over those hills you got the Pacific Ocean beyond that. Nice bay breeze. You can see the fog bank just coming in over San Francisco over there. See, they got that one building that looks like a butt plug. What is it, the Salesforce building? Hideous building. You get the Golden Gate right over there. See that? See the Golden Gate Bridge? What's it cost to cross that thing now? Like $9? Jesus Christ. I'll stay on this side, thank you.